Screening as part of the Unknown Pleasures series of films that are co-curated by Bill Masulis and Digby Houghton is Mr. Neal is entitled to be an agitator on July 29th. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of the film, Daryl Dellora, and to the co-curator, Digby Houghton. Digby and Darryl, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks, Peter. It's
Peter.
great to be here.
Great to talk to you both. And let's first of all, Digby, if I can ask you first of all, what made you decide, or what was the decision to screen the film, Mr. Neal is Entitled to be an Agitator as part of Unknown Pleasures?
Yeah, it's like a slightly longish story, but basically the independent filmmaker John Hughes gave me a monograph about the creative development branch published around the early 90s called Signs of Independence. And I saw a film there called I think it was called Hollywood 10, Melbourne 1. And I was curious and had a little Google and found the video was the short film by Daryl Dellora was up on YouTube as a kind of a low res copy. And I was quite intrigued. And it kind of tells the story of kind of a docu-fiction story of the communist aligned author Frank Hardy as he kind of walks around Fitzroy and attends football games. And I was very curious. So I caught up with Darryl late last year to ask if he'd want to curate or screen a feature, particularly something that he co-collaborated with Sue Maslin on, who's one of his frequent producers. Yeah, and then we kind of spoke about the idea of Mr. Neal is entitled to be an agitator. And yeah, I think there's prescient themes and analogies with the sort of deconstruction of perhaps what Lionel Murphy legislated in the 70s and onwards with where we're at the moment with liberal democracy. Yeah, and I thought it'd be good to have Daryl and Sue come in.
Excellent explanation. That's great, and I'm so glad to see the film again. Darryl, it's such an interesting film. Tell me about the origins of making the film.
Well, anybody who lived through that period and saw what was going on with Lionel Murphy, not so much the period when he was Attorney General, because that was a little bit before my time. I was pretty young then, still at high school. But when he sort of came unstuck, and there was the what was called the Murphy affair, and a whole series of inquiries into him sitting on the High Court and so on. It was a real such a tragic sort of story to see unfold every night on the television, and Jenny Hocking and I both felt that this was a really powerful story to tell about an Australian legislator and then High Court judge and his course and his life and so on and what happened to him. And even more powerful because a lot of the themes that were reflected in the sorts of interests he had as a legislator and then on the High Court came back again later when he came under this pressure. So things like, his own human rights, his own ability to speak out, sort of transparency, the media. He'd spoken at length about media trials and the importance of the law, especially in criminal matters, not becoming a kind of circus for the media and that sort of thing. And yet that's exactly what then came around and happened to him. So we really felt it was a really strong story and a really fascinating story that didn't just tell you about Australian history and legal and political history. It did that, but it also told you something about a particular person and their kind of struggles and their achievements, really.
Yes. Oh, it's an excellent documentary with some docudrama elements in it. Tell me about balancing those, and I saw Ernie Dingo in it, of course, and so on.
Yeah, look, Ernie was fantastic. So it just seemed absolutely right to focus on one of Lionel Murphy's judgments from the High Court, which was the Neal judgment, which was about an Aboriginal leader in far north Queensland who had been charged with spitting assault by spitting at the local store owner. And, one of the things that doesn't come across in the film because of an issue with the sets is that this all actually happened between a fly screen. So he was never actually right in front of this guy's face. But you can't actually see that in the film because when we constructed the sets, the fly screen sort of disappeared. You didn't realise it was there. But that made it sort of interesting because he always says he didn't spit at this man. And anyway, he was convicted of it, and he went to jail for 6 months with hard labour.
Wow.
And was a sentence which had been increased by the Court of Appeal in Queensland. So firstly, he got 3 months with hard labour. That's what the magistrate gave him. And then he ended up serving 6 months with hard labour. And by the time the case came before the High Court and came before Lionel Murphy, where Lionel wrote this scathing judgment about the case, of course, he'd served his time. So it was a tragedy for Mr. Neal, but the case was such a powerful one, we felt we wanted to kind of begin the whole film with it and have Ernie Dingo play the character of Mr. Neal and talk about Lionel's sort of excoriating judgment about systemic racism in the Queensland magistracy and in the courts and in the police and so on. And this all occurred back in about 1982. And as Digby was saying, a lot of these things have not changed, unfortunately. So it's rather tragic. In fact, you could say in Queensland in particular, things have gone backwards now when you've got ideas about locking children up for crimes and saying, oh, they just should be locked up the same way as adults are locked up. It's frightening. But anyway, so Ernie played the role of Mr. Neal, and then we decided we'd have him narrate the film as well because it just made sense. And so he went on and narrated, and that was fantastic. Although at that time, so it's about 1990 when we were making it, we did come up and people objected to having an Aboriginal voice narrated film. It's surprising, isn't it? But they said, no, you can't do that. People will turn off or they won't understand what he's saying or something. Like, it's quite ironic given that Ernie made a whole career out of like narrating TV programs subsequently. No, so we had a few battles with things like that at the time. And of course, with the dramatised sequences, we dramatised a few other elements in the story as well, which we thought were important.
Yeah, no, it all works together really well, and as I said, it's such a good documentary. I'm always intrigued about archival footage because there's a fair bit of it in the film, and I know there's always issues about accessing and paying for and all that sort of thing for archival footage. Tell me about with Mr. Neal Is Entitled to be an Agitator, how all that worked.
Yeah, look, we had a really good relationship back then with the ABC and also the National Film and Sound Archive, and they located materials for us which we knew were there. So we knew they were there. We just asked for them to dig them out. That in those days, you were a little bit at the kind of mercy of what they happened to have kept and how they happened to have kept it, So there were a lot of things. I think one person was telling us if it was anything to do with 1975, for example, and Malcolm Fraser, that there was somebody in at the ABC who had sort of scoured everything and taken it away, and it's literally disappeared. So I remember hearing a story about how the head of somebody in Sydney rang Canberra office on the 11th of November saying to the ABC, saying, get everything you've got from the day and package it all up and make sure you look after it. And they said, it's gone. We don't know where it's gone, but everything here that we had has gone, which is really interesting. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangential story, but archives are always a bit dependent on what what is kept and who decided to keep what. So we were lucky in some respect. We got some great stuff. We got some great footage of Lionel Murphy in Paris when he took the French to the International Court of Justice over nuclear testing, above ground testing in the Pacific. Um, so there was some great footage there, and there was footage of his famous raid of ASIO that he was heavily criticised for, but he that was unique as well. So we did well, actually, in some respects, to get that material.
Yes, no, well done on that. I was quite intrigued as I rewatched the film that I was wondering if you had any legal issues, especially with ASIO being mentioned and involved, and other aspects of Lionel Murphy's life. How did all that go?
Yeah, look, we had the normal checks, that are done, and I think the ABC lawyers went over it and so on. It was amusing actually because the only thing that change or insert into the film was that when you see you'll see there's a whole story about how the New South Wales Police conducted an illegal phone tapping operation for years, and they tapped hundreds of people's phones and before they were forced to stop it. Anyway, we had a line we showed in the film how they were doing that. So we portrayed that in some reconstructions, and it featured telecom trucks and logos, which is what had happened. And, actually not being used by telecom personnel. Anyway, telecom complained about that and said, you have to put a line in that says, without our authority, they were used. So that was the only thing really where we had to make a change for legal reasons. But yeah, as with all sorts of projects like that, there you are treading on eggshells, but you've got to be careful about what you do. But in that respect, we've been pretty thorough, and we're touch wood so far never come across any disasters in that regard.
Fair enough. Interesting to hear all that. And telling Lionel Murphy's story, which is so interesting and expansive, you've also got some great interviews in the film. And were they easy to get, Gough Whitlam and Neville Wran and all those sorts of people?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is that when we went for funding and we told people we're going to make this film and we had a great big list of all these people who are going to be interviewed, the funding bodies, in this case it was Film Victoria, didn't believe us. And they said, you can't have those people. We don't believe it. They said, you have to go away and get a letter from every person because we already had their agreement, to be in the film.
Ah,
Anyway, they said you have to get a letter from each of these people with the words, I am willing to be involved. So we had this one line letter that we typed up and sent to them. They all signed, Julie signed it. But boy, that was interesting. But no, we did. They were all really keen to speak when we told them what it was about. So that was the great thing, really. I think that says more about Lionel than it says about us. I think people really wanted to speak about him, which was fantastic. And there were other people who didn't make it into the film or didn't want to be in the film. For example, um, Andrew Peacock, who was the leader of the Liberal Party at the time, he was a very close friend of Lionel's, and he really had some incredible things to say. But we didn't interview him for the film, and he didn't want to be in the film probably. Um, I can't remember now, but it might have just been that there were too many interviewees. He'd got to make a decision somewhere along the line
sure.
about who does and who doesn't.
Well, in fact, on that note, with all the archival footage, the interviews you do have, etc., the editing process to get it down to a 1 hour film must have been quite a task.
Oh, it really was. And we were so lucky. I worked with Danny Cooper then, who's a very well known editor now. But that was one of the first films she'd edited, and she is an extraordinary editor and really put her heart and soul into that film. And as with a lot of documentaries, the editing can be, one of the most important things really in the film, and pull it together in a way that really makes a success of it. She certainly did that with this project.
Yeah, no, excellent. That all worked out well. When the film was first released in around 1991, I gather, um, what was the response that you got?
Yeah, very interesting response. It was very successful, got great ratings. And in fact, in those days, it was finished on film, on 16 millimeter film. And we had a distribution agreement with, I think it was Ronin Films then, and they toured it all around Australia. So it screened at the Carlton Movie House when that used to go for quite a while, for about 6 weeks, I think,
Hmm.
and did really well. So that was a great kind of return, that audiences who really enjoyed it, and it just kept going. And the media responded pretty well to it too. We got some great film reviews of it, and we got some heavily criticised by the right wing press for making this film about Lionel Murphy, which was to be expected. But and the funny thing is that the title was always a bit of an issue as well with the broadcaster. They didn't like this great big long title,
Mm.
Mr. Neal Is Entitled to be an agitator. They thought it was a mouthful. So we had to fight to keep that. But the funny thing is that that title kind of went into the cultural subconscious or something. And I remember seeing, not that long after, probably about 92, when the Mabo decision came out, there was a big headline in the Age that said, Mr. Mabo is entitled to be an agitator. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Because you could have just said the Lionel Murphy story or something like that,
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
but this sets us apart. Yeah, yeah.
it does. And I think it's a great title, and
Yes,
it's lived a great life because of that too.
yes. No, excellent stuff. I noticed the film has now been restored with a 4K version. Now that's terrific to see.
Yeah, it is. Well, maybe Digby can talk a little bit about that, because I
Yeah.
didn't really wasn't involved in that process. But
Okay. Okay, Digby, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Peter Tammer, a friend of the show, has sort of resources to upscale old and um, maybe a bit, yeah, old video material, and he's gone and upscaled it to 4K. So the screening on Tuesday night will be an upscaled version of the fight of the kind of I think it was the DVD cut or the VHS cut of the film. Yeah, so yeah, that's another reason to get a ticket.
It is.
yeah, no, it was the so
Yeah, no, go on,
DVD was
Daryl.
it? Yeah,
Yes.
well, sorry, it was the
yeah,
DVD, wasn't it? Because I
yeah,
gave Peter the DVD that Daryl gave me. Yeah,
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 yeah. And yeah, it's an incredible job that he's done. Peter did an amazing job of upscaling. It looks really good. It's really powerful. Um, the purists will probably be interested to know the difference between that and looking at the video at the 16 millimeter projection of the print.
yeah.
So there are differences there, but no, it looks great. So it projects really well.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the story. That's the main thing, and getting that film out there and to a broader audience too. So that is terrific to see. There's a few more things I want to ask, but Digby, let's just mention the screening details and how people can book.
Yeah, so it's Tuesday night, the 29th of July at 8:15 p.m. at the Thornbury Picture House. We've been alerted by Bill that there's not a lot of tickets going, so maybe a handful left. So if you're keen, jump in and get the last few tickets. And the film is sort of short-ish. It's like a factual 1 hour length, so we'll probably have a good amount of time for me, Sue, and Darryl to talk after. So that's Sue Maslin to talk after the screening if people want to bring questions and whatnot.
Yeah, and
Yes.
also should just mention that Jenny Hocking, who
Oh,
co-wrote
yeah.
the script, is going to be speaking on
Yeah.
that panel as well. So yeah, it should be a really great discussion, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Daryl, you and Sue have been responsible for so many interesting films. How do you make decisions about what you decide to make a film about?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. Well, of course, we've been working together for so long now, and actually, Sue and I went to uni together. We went to film school together in Canberra, and so we've sort of been very close for a long period of time, and we kind of know in a way what the other person might think about things, and so it kind of works like that a bit. Generally, with the documentaries, it's something that I get obsessed with, and then I have to convince Sue that it's going to work, on the screen. But of course, we made lots of other think projects together, and all the drama, the feature films and things are things that Sue has always been the producer and the driving force behind, really. So it
Yeah.
just depends on project to project to a certain extent.
Yes. No, it's such an excellent array of films. What are you working on now?
Well, I'm just taking a bit of a rest now. We had a film last year, The Search for the Palace Letters,
Oh, yeah.
which is still on the ABC iView channel, and we're in the process of just going through actually our whole catalogue of films and looking at them in terms of how we might get further. People can get access to them because sometimes if they're only, like this one was 16 millimeter and then only available on DVD. But we also, just this year, we had our film Harry Seidler Modernist, which is a documentary about the life of Australian architect Harry Seidler and his work, screening in Venice at an exhibition there, which was fantastic. So, yeah, at the moment, just taking a bit of a step back. The industry's in a very strange place at the moment, and I'm finding it difficult to see where we go with independent documentaries in particular. I think there needs to be a real look at this is probably a discussion for another time, but there needs to be a look at how the funding processes work at the moment because the independent sector, I think, is really squeezed. We're not really able to make independent documentary the way we used to be able to. There's a lot more issues about broadcasters' requirements and that sort of thing, and also kind of more formulaic product.
Yeah.
A lot of documentaries now, almost all of them have some presenter based in some way, and the presenter is often some kind of identity, an actor or actress or, some kind of celebrity. And we're not interested in making films like that, and we'll never do that. So it is difficult. It's a difficult climate out there.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. And I know you've also spoken about the cost of accessing archival footage and how prohibitive that can be.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, when you look at our films, they've all, by and large, had large components of archival footage, and it seems ridiculous to me that when, say, for example, the ABC creates something that's paid for by the taxpayer, that material, and then it's put on a shelf, and then it's sold back later to people who want to use it. When the entire cost of it's being covered, there shouldn't be double dipping in that regard. I don't think. I think archival film should, especially archival film that is owned entirely by the public in terms of being a public broadcaster material should be provided for free. And it works really well in the United States. All public domain material, um, government material is public domain. It should be the same here,
Mm.
and we would then see a lot more of it being used because, frankly, independent producers are the ones that generally like to use this material, and they can't use it because it's too expensive to use, and that's an issue for the National Film and Sound Archive as much as it is for the ABC and SBS that charge these huge, $60 a second or something fees to use archival footage. And all it means is that people don't use it
Yeah.
because they can't afford it.
Can't afford it. No, absolutely. That's ridiculous. I agree with you. There is one final question I wanted to ask you, Daryl. How did Lionel Murphy's family respond to the documentary?
Oh, really well. It's one of the things I regret actually is that his wife, Ingrid Murphy, is in the film,
Yeah.
and his brother, Bill Murphy, is in the film, but I didn't actually title them. I didn't say Bill Murphy, Lionel's brother, it just says Bill Murphy. And the same with Ingrid, it doesn't say Lionel Murphy's wife. But they're both really important interviewees in the film. And the family was really, very pleased to see a film that really was made from Lionel's perspective, and gave his point of view, because there'd been so much material in the media up until that point that was anti Lionel Murphy. It was a bit of a kind of a corrective, I think, to the history and to this to the media coverage. So yeah.
Okay. Well done on that. Okay. Great talking to you both. We've
Yeah,
been
lovely
spe-
to talk to you, Peter. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been speaking to Daryl Dellora, director of Mr. Neal Is Entitled to be an Agitator, and to Digby Houghton, who is the co-programmer with Bill Masoulis of Unknown Pleasures for the film screening on Tuesday, July 29th, as part of Unknown Pleasures. Thank you both for talking with me.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much, Peter. It
Peter.
was
Thanks,
a
Daryl.
pleasure.
All the best. Bye bye.
Bye.